Alright, welcome back. It's Autodesk 3ds Max 2018 video number 16. Today we are going to talk a little bit about your first free project. We're going to call this free one. You will have already started with a piece of concept art, and hopefully that concept art is set up appropriately. One of the most important things you can do this week as you're working on your project is think about how your object can be broken up into multiple pieces and then modeled individually. That means anything that can be modeled that is individual, like a section of something that is put together, you want to make sure that you're building that out separately. So just as a reference, we're going to start here. Now I'm going to actually convert this box to a editable poly, mostly so that I can get into the sub-object selection. Things like vertices and stuff like that. Smart money is on making sure that you build out things that work immediately, things that you know that are going to be needed, and only build them where you're sure they're going to work. So for instance, it's kind of a vague statement, but you don't need to worry about shapes that aren't going to be functional. Okay, so for instance, I'm taking this edge, right? I know that I'm going to make this rifle butt first, so I'm going to go to loops and insert a loop. That's going to be one of the most important tools you have in your arsenal during this project. Understanding how to build out things and looking for concept art spots that will make sense. So I know that to get the geometry I need, I'm going to have to make F4. I need to make sure that I'm mostly looking at how these edges are put together. So I know that this top part, if I hit T, this whole section that I'm working with now, it comes in some. And really, the smart way to do this is making sure you're constantly moving and snapping to the center line. Now that's a lot easier said than done. If you hit R and you make sure that you're in select and non-uniform scale, you can align vertices together by dragging in towards the zero line, and then you can hit W and actually snap them on the x-axis. So that means that this whole section that I just created through here is now set on and aligned to the x-axis. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to go to set this and say, okay, I'm only going to build half of this gun because the gun looks exactly the same on both sides. So to build two pieces is silly. So I'm going to take this section and make sure that it looks right. Then I'm going to copy it to the other side. Okay, now you want to work on the side that you have. So in the top view, for instance, you'll notice that right now my zero line runs right down the barrel. So what I should do is I'm going to take this whole section and move this over. Now in order to do that effectively, I now have to move the pivot point. We talked about moving pivot points before. You come up here, effect pivot only, and then snap this to 0 by right clicking on the X. Okay, so now the pivot is set. So now because of that, I can go back, grab my box, hit 1, the number 1 on the number line, and I can move this to X, and I can move this over, and now I'm working with half of the object. Eventually, when we copy this over, and I'm not going to do the whole thing for you today because we don't really have that much time, but I do want to show you a couple tools. Number one, when you're extruding things, you want to make sure that you're extruding things out in a logical way. So for instance, you can tell that this is going to extrude out from here. So I'm going to grab this polygon here, and I can extrude it using this extrude tool right there. When I extrude this out, oops, I can just, there's two different types. There's group, or three different types, local, normal, and polygon. In this case, we're going to take polygon, which grabs the polygon itself. Because we only have one extrusion, it's easy to fix. Now, what I'm doing is I'm actually moving some of these. If I hit number 1, I can get just verts. I'm going to take this, move this up here, take this, move this over here, and take this and move it down here. And you can see I'm sort of outlining the basic shape of the object. You can also, there's a whole bunch of other tools that you can learn you can take an edge, and chamfering, which is over here, chamfering allows you to break that edge along a specific angle. So I can set 2 more edges there. I click OK, and then now I've got edges to work with. So for instance, this can go there and this can go here. You may be wondering why I haven't done this section up top, this section through here. Well, the main reason I haven't done that yet is because I don't really need to yet. That would probably be a whole separate object. Now, sometimes separate objects make sense and sometimes they don't. You can tell this rifle kind of goes all the way through into, I don't know, roughly here and maybe even up to there. Oops, make sure I move along that line. So the rifle portion, now there's this hood that goes over it. From the top you can sort of see that there's some sort of like hood that goes on, that maybe even is some sort of cylinder. If I was to make this at your current skill level, I would look in the front view for F for front, and in order to build that, I would probably build a separate object that is something along the lines of a cylinder. I would hit S for snap. I'd snap to there. I'd roughly get it like that, and then I'd see what I made. So from here, we generally want to start with as few objects as possible, or a few segments as possible. Now I know that this thing's going to come all the way down, and it's going to create most of this hood portion. And once again, this object is probably more complex than you should really be hacking at right now. But I have the concept art already, and I figured it would sort of make sense to mess with. So from the front, I want to make sure that my cap segments are set. I have a logical number of sides. Once again, sides are really important. 16 sides is really an ideal number. You could go 32, but when we're starting this low poly work, you should probably stick with low sides. I'm going to right click on this object, convert to editable poly. Now I've got polygons to work with, so I can take something like these, maybe even grab all of them like that, but not you, and then move up like that, and then deselect Alt. Using Alt, I'm going to deselect these and move these up like that, and then maybe squeeze them all in like that. Now notice I'm getting the rough general shape. I'm not trying to work miracles with this. I'm not putting in all those extra ridges. I'm just sort of getting the idea down. And I look and see where shapes like this are changing. So now I want to bring them in and then possibly even get it set like that. But I want that bottom line to be straight. Left. And if you guys get close to the general idea, we're going to be really happy. Because that, more than anything, that's what we're trying to achieve here. Just like the general basic shape of some objects. You'll notice it snaps up. I should probably turn snapping off before I start doing stuff like that. Okay, and this, if you've ever got a vertex that's kind of like off from everything else, a lot of times you can go to geometry and then relax it and it'll jump into place. Now from here, I'm going to extrude out just portions of this piece. See this ring here? We're getting the same on both sides. And then I'm going to extrude that out with the extrusion tool. Okay, good. And now I'm going to take these vertices here at the end. I'm going to shrink them down like this. Oh, I'm not happy with that. Maybe bring them in a little bit like that. Left. And then hit W. Pull them out like that. There are a lot of skills that you do not possess yet that will take time. Don't be too concerned if things don't look perfect. You're just going for a ballpark in this sort of situation. We're trying to get it close-ish while still looking moderately okay. So that's what we're doing. The next section would be something along the bottom. Probably another cylinder. Probably something similar. Let me see if I can take all of these and bring them. Cool. So see, because this is a separate object, it makes a lot of sense to make it a separate object. Now this back part, top view, even still, I'm probably going to select all of these faces and delete them. I'm also going to change the color of that thing to like blue. Okay, cool. That's roughly right. Now eventually you're going to get to the point where you've got all of your model completed, or at least half completed. If you've been building things intelligently, you're going to have it half completed, because there's no point in doing a lot of extra work when you're just going to copy it to the other side. For instance, now I'm trying to get to the selection of that, hit number 4 so I can grab faces, and I'm going to grab all of these inside faces. Actually, I want to finish the little handle piece here. Whenever you need to extrude out a piece, it makes the most sense to go ahead and grab the vertex or the edge itself and loop, insert a loop, and then hit W and move that loop back, and then do it again. I'm going to grab that there. I grab these edges here, loops, insert loop, and I'm going to move this back. Now the reason I did that is so that now I have some geometry here to extrude from. So from here, left Z for zoom, I'm going to extrude again. So I'm going to extrude and click OK. Hit number 1, grab these verts, and this is where you need to make a decision on how fancy you want to get. I really believe that you guys should not worry about doing too much of this like detail oriented stuff initially, like the trigger and trigger guards and stuff like that. There's no point in doing stuff like that before you're ready. I'm going to extrude again. Okay, grab this, and then hit number 1. Now in this case, I want to move this all the way down to there, and then I'm going to actually insert a few loops here. I'm going to insert loops, insert a loop, and then grab these two again, loop, insert a loop, and then now I've got some geometry to work with on this back end. You want to keep most of the geometry well spaced out, which I know is easier said than done. But you don't want like a whole bunch of geometry in one little spot and then hardly any in some other spots. You want to sort of keep it even. So, like I said, early in your career, it's one of those things where you're not really going to understand how that works. Now, for a situation like this, this is where I want to take this face here. Oh, I forgot to agree to do the extrude. So extrude, yes. So what I want to do is take this face and weld them together. Now you can't do that. You can't weld two faces that are actually there. But if you delete them, you have a hole. And holes can be welded because you can actually grab these verts that we have back here. This vert here can be welded to that. And then these can be welded to these. So if I hit 7, you can see how many verts, once again, our stuff isn't saving. Go into your, you definitely need it here. I've sort of lost track of it because we've been doing other things, but you definitely need triangle count, frames per second, total and selection, apply. Okay. So you definitely want to be able to select. So if I know I've got 4 verts and I select my weld settings and I crank it until they snap together, they should. That's odd. Let's try and target weld. Target weld won't work either. Usually that means there's a face somewhere on the inside, or they are facing opposite directions, which is also not the case. Did we forget to? Yes, we forgot to delete that face. So the only reason you can't weld 2 verts together is if there is a face between them. So now I should be able to grab both of those, weld, and then they snap pretty much right together. At least they should. I'll click OK. Yeah, that was just a weird glitch. It looked weird. Same thing over here. There are 4 vertices right here. Left. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. If I snap, or if I weld these together, now I've got 2 because now they're together there. Now I should have a face in there, but I don't. Okay, so this is an interesting sort of situation. So now I've got a hole in my geometry. So if I grab this border, you can see I have a hole. Whenever you have a hole, you can actually cap it, and usually that will solve the problem. So I should be able to click on this now, and I have that set up. Now, everything here has been kind of blocky-ish, right? But we also need to do things like a trigger. Now, a trigger won't come all the way out to the very edge. A trigger sort of sits on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something simple. So I'm going to go and create a box from the left, just a simple little box like that. And then from the front view, I'm going to look and make sure it's not too thick, which mine isn't. Currently, it's pretty good. I'll make it thinner than it looks like it should be. And now, that box I can convert to an editable poly. Once it's an editable poly, I can move it with W and move it inside where I want the actual shape to be. And now I've got my trigger looking shape. Like if it's this sort of I'm going to do something like this, and then I'm going to extrude out right here. Hit 4, grab that, extrude. It's going to be super long. Click OK, and then move it back to where you want it. I mean, we could have adjusted it then too, but and then I'm going to number 1. Oops, grab just the vertex I want and drag it. Cool. So now we've got a nice, comfortable trigger for our Space Marine to shoot all the bad guys with. There we go. Now it's thin, and it's got inside faces, which we generally don't want, especially when we're going to copy this whole thing to the other side. Now for the last thing, I'm going to create another box to make this back sort of section here. I'm also going to bring this in some. Hit the number 1. Grab these verts. I think these can go. No, I don't think I can make those look good unless I adjust them. Now, if you're ever going to have something that curves in, you've got to have enough geometry to let it do so. Okay, so the idea here is from the top view, I'm going to create another box. T for top, create the box, front, left. Okay, now we know the box should be that big, but let's see where it should be. Roughly here-ish. And then I know also that it runs, it has another section I'm going to convert to editable poly. I'm going to hit M, and it's going to think, because I want to be able to see through it. This art isn't great. It's good size-wise, but it's hard because it's tough to see the detail. There we go. Now I can see through it. So it would be nice if I could see through it a little better. I'm going to add a loop there. Modeling, loops, insert loop. Cool. So this detail here will come up to there. This will come to there. This will come out like that. That, and then these, if you ever want vertices to line up together, hit R for resize, and then link them along one axis only until they line up, and then you can move those over like that. I don't think this is supposed to be that deep, so that's kind of like that. Now if I want this to be smoother, which in this case at this juncture I would not worry about, but let's say you want to, I'll take that and move those to 0 on X so that they line up with the grid. But I want, let's say I want these to be smoother, like this top part I want to be more cushy, more rounded. Then I'm going to have to find a way to give it more geometry. And the way we generally do that is by adding sections like this. I'm going to round this whole section out by taking all of these, and then I'm going to chamfer. Chamfer's a mixed bag. Sometimes it works out real well, and sometimes it just looks real rough. But in this particular case, I knew it would be alright. And it does give us a nice sort of curved edge to it, like that. And then I'm not quite done either, because once I'm done with that, deselect that, I can grab these sections here, and then I can actually move them in a little bit so it looks a little more comfortable. And I don't really know how far that thing's supposed to go out or what it's actually supposed to look like, but that kind of works. So now I've got this gun-ish front. I do need a barrel, because why not? So let's get our barrel is going to be cylinder, and I'm going to turn snapping on. I'm just going to make it roughly about that long, and then hit W and move it over here. Okay, I can check it, so I can extrude the radius is good. I'm going to stick with 8 because it seems about right, and then my height, I'm just going to make it long enough to stick in. For the barrel itself, it already kind of comes, as long as you had set the sight cap segments to 2. It already kind of has what you need. We're going to convert it to an editable poly. Hit 4 to grab by faces. Grab all the faces, deselect those, and then deselect is holding Alt. And then I'm just going to deselect all these, and then I'm going to extrude inward. So instead of positive 10, I'm just going to go minus 10-ish. Click OK, hit left, and now I've got a barrel that I can if I deselect it, now I got a barrel that I can move in to the gun. And I'm going to turn snapping off. If I don't like it in general, I can make it bigger until it fits where I think it should fit. And even then, I'm going to hold Shift, drag this down to here, right? And I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to call this M flashlight. I don't really need to, because we're going to end up linking them all and welding them all together. But for now, we'll just pretend. So I'm going to add 3 loops in here, a loop here, and a loop behind it, like that. And now I can grab these faces and expand them out using the R. See that? L. I can probably just keep doing that out until it looks about right. That looks pretty good. And then these I can also expand out left. And now we've got our pseudo tool here. Now remember that barrel that I made in there? That barrel is not in a good spot anymore. We've got a barrel all the way down there that I don't really want. I'm going to hit Q again twice. And then over here is a cool thing, ignore back facing. So now I'm just going to click in here and make a circle. And now I only selected those faces. So from here I'm going to grow the selection, which is over here, grow, grow, grow. And I'm going to delete all of those. Then I'm going to get border, cap. Then I can grab this loop here. Boop. I'm going to go back to my old selection type. Hold Alt. And then Alt. And then Alt. I basically just want that inner ring. I can right click and actually convert to vertex. So now with vertex, actually I probably should have done this first. Delete that center. Grab that edge. I have more than what I want. Something's not right. Oh yeah, I have stuff up there. If I double click, I can grab this, put this all together, convert to vertex, pull it together again. Now I've got all those 16 vertex. I'm going to weld, and it says after that I'll have an 82. which means they got put into one. Now, if you wanted to go fancy on this flashlight, you could also make it actually have, like, grab these, deselect that. Oh, it's because I have back facing off. I don't usually keep back facing off. In this case, I could inset these. Inset is like an extrusion, sort of, right? So I've inset it, right? And I'm insetting as a group. And there's a bunch of different ways. And then I can do that. And then I can extrude in by, I can right click that spinner and extrude in just a little bit for the flashlight. Okay. And now I can grab, convert to edge, hold control, and deselect all of, yep, I can deselect all of those. It's not the fastest way to do it. But I want to have enough because I'm going to add another loop around the inside because glass, especially glass from 1999 or whatever, when Halo was first built, has a sort of bubbly nature to it. So I'm going to insert a loop and that'll give me a round spot, which I can then convert to vertex or poly. Deselect these. Wrong button. And now I can hit W, move this out a little bit, and then grab the vert, it's in the center, move it out a little more, just like that. So now it's got kind of a flashlight look to it. From the front view, I'm going to grab both of those and move them to the center. Once again, because they're built properly, I can just right click on their X value while hitting there, and they're built. Okay, so there you go. Roughly, that's where you should be in a couple days. This bottom section would probably be something along the lines of this again, or maybe even something like this. Don't be afraid to grab a piece that you already have. Select OK, and I'm just going to rotate it around like that. A for angle snap. 80. And then move it like this. And then we've already got geometry here, so let's go ahead and use it. So I'm going to grab these, grab this, hit W, and move this back like that. And like I said, it's not perfect, but we are not interested in perfect right now. It's close enough. Cool. Cool. Now all we need to do is hit 4, make sure all of our faces from the front view, I'm going to select all of these faces. Oh, I know why. Okay, I can't select the other objects yet because I need to attach them all. So I've got this. I'm going to figure out one of these is going to be called rifle. So I'm going to call it M for mesh, Halo rifle. Now, since I've got that selected, now I get to go in and actually select attach. So I'm basically going to go in and attach all of this stuff to the Halo rifle so that it's all the same. Now it's all the same piece. It's a bunch of pieces, but it's all the same rifle. From the front, I'm going to clean up all this stuff that's hanging off the other side. I'm going to hit 4. I'm going to grab all this and make sure I don't have anything left that's not attached that's hanging over. So it's all deleted. And now I can take this object here, the whole object. I'm going to hit number 1, grab every single vert, including making sure I don't get any others that I don't want. Hit R, squeeze them all together, hit W, make sure they're set to 0, and now I can actually weld them across. Okay. The easiest way to do that is with the mirror tool. We're going to mirror with a copy and click OK. Now we're going to attach by hitting Q, selecting the original part, and we're going to attach the new part, which is right down Where'd it go? I'm missing it. Oh, I shouldn't have anything selected. I should have 2 of these. Cool. Here's attach. So I'm going to attach the new piece. I'm going to hit W, or make sure I have all of these edges selected so I can just grab borders. Like that. Right click, convert to vertex. Now I have 124, so I should end up with 62 when I weld them. I'm going to weld by sections, and I'm going to make sure it's just very small, like click OK. I have 65. So at some point, a couple of them did not weld, or something didn't work right. So the best way to find out where the hole is grab borders and see what pops up. And the only thing that pops up are these. So looks like these 2 and these 2 did not weld. Let's see if we can weld them. If you crank it up, it works. And that's on the inside, so we don't care too much anyway. Cool. So if we wanted to make that smooth, now that we have the object, I'm going to hit M. And a lot of times it's good just to put a different sort of material on there once you have an idea of what it's supposed to look like. Right? And then I'm going to close this out. Hit perspective. And there we go. I mean, once again, it's a real short and sweet, but you sort of get the idea. And from here you can do a little more. Maybe say, I'll bring that in. Take this and this. Hit W. I'm going to move them down here in a minute. Actually, maybe I'll take this, this, and this. Left view. I'm going to hit F3. Grab this. What I want to do is I kind of want to make it a little smoother. Grab these and move them up a little bit. Now, the only problem is once you start working on just individual pieces, like both sides, it can get really tricky really fast as to like if you're messing stuff up. Because you want to make sure you stay perfectly symmetrical, because later on, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much right now, but later on it becomes a real big problem. There, see how it's more rounded now? Also, here would be a good time where you want to start looking into like, okay, which pieces should be, let's connect those, which pieces would be rounded, which faces you would worry about. Like right now I've got a weird sort of face thing going on over here because I've got edges that look bizarre, and I want them all to be the same, so I'm going to make those 4 there, so it's a little smoother. So now if I hit P and I render it, F9, that's basically what we did in like 30 minutes. So you're going to want to render that with the F9. A couple different views. Usually I like one big perspective view like this, and then we would do another one like, and then obviously you need to hit F10 first so that you're doing it properly and not like this. And you're going to want to render out a bunch of different viewpoints, that way you can make it look really nice. So that should be good there. Shift F, maybe even a bottom view. Render. Alright, more smoothing groups will help this whole thing look better, but you sort of get the idea. The whole thing's only 906 tries, which isn't even that bad for an Xbox game. Anyway, that's where we're at. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can remember. I know there's a ton of stuff that sort of flew at you that way. I'll see if I can go through and highlight individual moves, like when I did welding or when I did other sorts of stuff, and try and give you a heads up on when those are so you can sort of snap to those in the comments. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.